Let's jump to the story from NBC News. Some supporters of a far-right convoy headed to the Texas border are calling for civil war. We love NBC News. They are crackpot far leftists. But sure, a group that referred to itself as God's Army said it was planning 3 peaceful assemblies on Saturday. The convoy has attracted only a small number so far. Well, like 12 people, I think. They say it's a trucker convoy of self-described patriots headed toward the U.S. border with Mexico. They've expressed violent rhetoric before. You see.
But they don't give examples.
They don't give examples.
They never give
Trust
examples.
us. It's fine.
It's like when they say that they have specific tweets that are bad, and they never actually include the tweets in the article.
Do not. This is why I agree with James Lindsay. James Lindsay said, "Do not go down there."
Oh yeah,
I agree. I think you go to Texas, stay away from the border. Let Greg Abbott do his job. We've already learned today from a field reporter who's actually been there that what Greg Abbott has set up has massively worked. You were saying before it's bedlam, and then once the National Guard comes in, now it's 4 to 6,
which is an insane contrast.
Single digits from 10,000. I think was 10,000 the whole border though, or was
so it's in certain they break it up into sectors. When I was down there, they were breaking records every single month. So you had thousands coming through. It wasn't like 10,000 all at once. You never see any crossings like that, but you do see thousands per day sometimes.
And as soon as the National Guard of Texas takes over, it has mostly solved the problem. If people show up and get in the way, you're getting in the way of the guys winning. It's like, nah, don't do that. Don't do that. Especially because it looks like NBC is trying to prime normies to expect violence and calls for civil war. So do not give them an opportunity to false flag.
Almost likely be down there covering whatever this turns into. But I don't really see it going very far. I mean, I saw a Fox News hit the other day where they said 700,000 vehicles were on their way, which I don't know where they came up with that number.
I think
I've been in contact with people
in
the convoy. It isn't happening. That's not how big they are. Yeah, you have a few thousand people heading down, but there's also 3 different endpoints. So they're going to be split up between 3 different endpoints in different sectors of the border. So I'm not expecting, a huge crowd there, but articles like this is basically just priming people and prepping people for what would be a false flag. Like, what are you possibly going to do going down to the border to actually help National Guard or to help the good guys win in this case?
It was very different than the trucker convoy where they're basically locking down all around Canadian Parliament and saying, we're going to make your life so difficult because you have made our life so difficult. I don't really see the same symbolic thing. I understand wanting to show your support, obviously wanting to do something. I like the idea of call to action, but ultimately anyone I know who knows about this has started being like, feds everywhere.
Yep. And a lot of people think it's going to be J6 all over again.
I feel like that about anything where there's any amount of protest now, right? Because it's not a matter of who goes, it's a matter of who controls the media narrative around what happens, right?
But I don't think the media narrative matters as much as people think. I'm well beyond this. Like, we just saw digital media implode over the past few weeks, and it's been in free fall for the past couple of years. One of the worst days ever. They got to call it like Bloody Thursday or something, how many layoffs there were this week.
Yeah, Taylor Lorenz's video of her complaining about all of it. I mean, they're laying people off during election season, election writers as well, which is insane. But I have a problem with, people not attending. Like, I understand protests. I understand the point of them. Obviously, they're not hyper effective, especially after January 6th. But everybody has essentially been neutered after January 6th. And I was there on January 6th, so I understand the ramifications.
But look, I'm not saying don't protest, don't organize, don't get together, don't have assemblies. I'm saying don't go up against CBP on federal jurisdiction during a conflict.
Well, and especially when Border Patrol has essentially sided with the National Guard in this situation. I think the protest was planned before the Shelby Park stuff happened. But now that this is actually going on, it does lead to more potential problems or conflict.
Buy it. And I don't care. In Arizona, have you been at the Arizona border?
A few times. Not as much as Eagle Pass,
Is CBP facilitating illegal immigration?
Everywhere.
So when they come out and they're like, no, we agree with Texas. And then they go, keep the human smuggling running in Arizona. I'm like, I don't care. That you get no free passes. Yeah, they've realized they've lost in Texas, but they still got New Mexico, they got Arizona, they got California. So they're probably looking at it like, hey, we're a bunch of human smugglers. Texas is going up against us. If we go to war with them, it could screw the whole operation up. Let's call it a loss and then shift all the cartel operations to these states so we can keep getting our kickbacks or whatever it is they're doing.
Well, and the reality is they haven't even lost in Texas at this point. Just in the Shelby Park and Eagle Pass sector, which is where most illegal migrants do come through, because 15 miles upwards, you're still having, illegal migrants cross this area. So it's still happening. You're just not seeing these massive groups, but they're still allowing people to be processed. And there are rumors that, any immigrants that are being, basically detained by National Guard are essentially being handed off to CBP. There are some videos out there. So it could still just be, it could just be for looks, which would be a shame, but I don't think it is that in this case. But they need to do this for all of Texas, the entirety of the Texas border, if they're actually serious about stopping illegal immigration completely.
I think when we see the actions of a lot of people on the right, I shouldn't say the right, but there are people who claim to be anti-establishment who in 2 seconds jumped ship and went full on establishment at a moment's notice. And I wonder what would happen if a civil war actually broke out. And I genuinely believe if in Texas something kicked off between the feds. First, people should understand this. When we had Eric Prince on the Culture War show, shout out Tenet Media, Friday mornings, 10 a.m., he said, I asked him, like, do you see in the United States similar things to these countries you've been in? And he said, the one thing I can tell you is that everybody I know who's been in these countries, they said it happened overnight. One day you went to bed, everything was fine. You woke up, the internet's out, electricity's out. You have no idea what's going on. And that's true if you're in the conflict region. What is also true is that most places, it'll be nothing. What'll happen? You're in New York, right? You'll go down to your bodega to get I don't know, maybe you want to get a turkey with American cheese on a Kaiser. Oh man.
Is that what they eat out there?
I used to, so I would get, whenever I would go to the bodegas, yeah, I'd be like turkey, white American, yellow American, mayo, Kaiser, heat it up. So good. I love me my bodegas. But you're going to be there and you're going to see the clerk who your neighbor, and you're going to be like, and he's going to be like, 13 more dead down at Eagle Pass. The fighting's getting crazy down there. And you'll go, wow, that's crazy. Anyway, you see the parade at the park? We're going to go check it out. You're going to be there later? All right, see you there. Mm-hmm. When I was I went to Ukraine in 2016 or 2017. And this is ongoing fighting happening in the Donbass region at the time, but it was limited skirmishes. Nobody in Kiev had said anything about it's whatever. And it was funny because when the fighting first kicked off, people were saying civil war. But then Donald Trump becomes president. The fighting starts simmering down. And I go there, my friend's like, we don't say civil war. It's just separatists fighting. And I'm like, fascinating. And it was completely out of sight, out of mind for everybody there. Went to a sushi restaurant, went to, I don't know what you'd call it, like fast casual with buffet style and got cabbage and beef. It was delicious and fun.
Well, I think the U.S. is a very unique place in the aspect of it's probably going to happen just like you're saying it's happening is, you'll have different regions of the U.S. that aren't affected by it at all. It's just news to them. And a lot of people, they won't even hear about the news at all. They won't even understand that anything is going on. And then finally, you will have something crack that does affect the rest of the country. But the way that the U.S. is set up and the way that our economy and everything else is set up in this country is it's not just going to, I don't think it's just going to be an overnight thing, blackout completely, all across the United States. And it very well could be. Eric Prince is a genius. I mean, he knows his stuff for sure. But the way that we're set up here in the U.S. is very unique compared to all these other regions that experience massive attacks like this.
If you're in these border regions where fighting breaks out, yeah, you're going to wake up with no electricity.
Yep.
I mean, the federal government's going to be like, we need to cut off their energy. We need to cut off their communications. You're going to wake up and have no internet. Your phone's not going to work. And there's going to be a military insurrection act declared. There will be either Texas or federal military securing the area saying everything's under control. Go back inside your house. And you're not going to know who's who. Imagine you're in Texas near Shelby Park, Eagle Pass. You're in the city or whatever. And an APC pulls up and guys in military uniforms jump out. The average person can't tell the difference between National Guard and Army. And this guy just, they pull up, they park the trucks out. They're standing guard. You get out of your house, there's something going on, like, everything's cool, man. Name's Jim. We're just doing security because there's been some conflict stuff going on, but you got nothing to worry about. Have a nice day. Who is it? Which faction is it? You won't even know. Mm-hmm. It's like that the trailer for Civil War.
Yeah, what kind of American are you?
They don't know who he is.
Well, the most unrealistic thing about that is a Texas-California alliance.
No, that's totally realistic. The movie has Texas and California as their own countries, not as two countries working together. It is not one country with two states. Texas and California, both wanting independence, would align militaristically to defend their sovereignty. They wouldn't be operating under the same governance. So it makes a lot of sense.
Well,
in the movie, they were flying like one flag though,
with 2 stars.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's like a NATO flag.
Yeah.
Here's my point. When I was saying earlier, you've got Florida, a lot of prominent conservative voices in Florida. If civil war or some kind of hot separatist action or whatever breaks out in Texas, not saying it will. Who knows? I guarantee you will get these right-wing personalities immediately saying, I'm on the side of Joe Biden. And I'm not talking about right now. It's easy to be like, Texas is in the right. But if it comes to the point where Texas is in active, full-on bullets flying conflict, and federal agents are returning fire, and then the Insurrection Act is declared, and then Joe Biden he says, insurrection, Texas, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be real interesting because the question will be, will Florida say this is an overreach and abuse of power by the federal government? This is an escalation. What will states say? And more importantly, for those content creators with a national audience and national ties, which side will they find themselves on? That's when you really put people to the test.
Yep.
The question is, who do you think is going to win? For some people, it's who do they want to win? So there will be some media personalities, and I think the higher. I don't want to name anybody and put anybody on the spot, but there's some prominent personalities that are streaming on YouTube and Rumble that I fully imagine would be absolutely on the moral position. Whether it is morally right or wrong, whatever anyone does, they're gonna stick to their guns. There's a handful of people I would imagine outright would just be like, hey guys, I'm with Joe Biden on this one. It'll be interesting to see.
Well, the people that don't have convictions and can hold themselves to their morals, they're going to be the side, siding with the federal government, essentially, siding with the big man. And that's really all that it comes down to. You side with the side that's in rebellion or he instates the Insurrection Act. You are now putting a target on yourself. And not a lot of people, especially commentators, are actually willing to go that far. They don't want documents like that.
I'll give you an example.
So,
Claire Lehman. Do you remember her?
Off the top of my head, I don't think.
Whatever happened to that lady? Do you guys remember Claire Lehman?
No.
She was intellectual dark web. She runs Quillette. I believe she probably still does. She was of the, the intellectual dark web people were like post-liberal academics, thinkers, and media personalities that had been challenging woke orthodoxy and the establishment narratives. And right. And so she's running Quillette, and Quillette was his publication that was like basically disaffected liberal, classically liberal. And then COVID happened. And Australia set up actual internment camps. Were forcefully relocating indigenous people.
I remember that story.
And she came out in full defense of it. Why? She's living under the boot of an authoritarian regime. And so she's thinking to herself, I will go to prison and be locked up in a camp if I speak out against them. So the only thing I can do is be on their side. And I think you could see the cognitive dissonance and the shattering of her mind because she knew. If I start calling out Howard Springs, we have that T-shirt, like come vacation Howard Springs. Yep. There's one story where 3 indigenous kids in a small community in the middle of nowhere, they came, took them under suspicion of COVID contact, brought them to an internment camp and locked them up and said, you can't leave. They threw like blankets over the razor wire, jumped the fence and escaped. And they were hunted down. And they were trying to arrest them. I'm like, yeah, totally voluntary COVID, camp. And she's like, they're not concentration camps. I'm like, well, they're literally driving up in vans, taking indigenous people and people from their homes, bringing them to camps and locking them up. They're concentrating them. Now, okay, fine, fair point. You think the allusion to World War II is too strong. Internment camps.
Yeah.
But this is my point. There's gonna be a lot of people who will flip on a dime. And they would have been the most libertarian people in the world. But the moment they realize, hey, look, man, I live in DC. I live just north of DC in Maryland. I'm going to get arrested in 2 seconds if I speak up. That's going to be interesting to see who does that.
COVID proved that as well a lot, how many people kind of fell under the regime as soon as things started getting called that way. Like you said, she immediately falls in line because of the way things are going, and I think that would continue.
I think it's fair to point out, too, not everybody agrees on everything, okay? Here we are right now saying to the people who are going down Texas, we do not want violence. We need Trump to win. In the event something actually kicked off hot, I am going to maintain that position to hope for stability so that Donald Trump can still take the presidency. That being said, I don't know, and I'm not going to say anything as to what happens here other than we don't want it to happen. You do not want civil war. I don't think the average American gets it. To be fair, I think the average person who watches a show like this gets it a little bit better, and all of the military veterans get it 100%. It is the world you knew is gone. You will continue shopping and eating food and cooking. But man, you ever see a rabbit eating grass outside? Just a little ball of stress the whole time. You never know when you're about to get snatched up by some bird of prey or some owl or who knows what. And so you're hiding all day, every day. It is not going to be fun. You know, you never know when someone's for no reason gonna attack you, and maybe even accidentally. It's just not going to be. It's not going to be as chill and comfortable.
Is this the issue Trump runs on? Immigration and economy?
He already is.
He's already run it.
I'm saying, but like,
that's
is
how we
there
got to 2016.
Well, they're saying like what is his biggest loss right now is female voters, right? Like, does the vote on migrant crisis affect? Does that really push the female voters in his demographic? Like, to his
I think
demographic?
immigration is becoming a very unifying issue for conservative or even moderate people because the effects are so far-reaching and they can see them all the time. The thing is, with the convoy to the border, there are people who want to be involved, they want to be on the ground, whatever else. I would say that Abbott has been preparing to be in this position for a long time, and it's better to let him work and to be supportive in a different way. It's the same thing with Trump. I mean, people will criticize Trump saying he didn't do enough when he was in office to achieve, whatever with immigration, but because he was the president, we have advanced this conversation, and it's become even more mainstream under a Democratic president. They couldn't deny what was going on.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.